Okay, so picking up where we left off, we had calculated our shoot to information, and we also made it so that our collision presets were set properly. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and make our projectile. So if you would go off into your third-person BP blueprints and come over here to where we have all of our other stuff, we'll want to right-click, and we are going to do a blueprint class. We're going to click actor. Remember, actor is anything that can be spawned in the world, and bullets are going to be spawned in. So click actor. Name it projectile. Name it projectile master. Double-click on it. Okay, and so we have our guy right here, and we want to go ahead and add a few different things to it. I'm going to reference my notes here, and hopefully it will pop up. Okay, so in our projectile master, the first thing we want to have is a sphere, and you want to make sure it's sphere collision. Okay. And there's a few sets. Well, first off, click on your projectile master. Make sure you click replicates. Trying to get ahead of the certain mistakes that we could make. So make sure you click replicates. The sphere itself, it's at 32, I believe that's centimeters. Let's go ahead and knock that down to 1. Okay. Compile, save that. Now, this, we actually want this to be the root. It gives you this white ball. That's just the scene, okay? It's like a default structure that's put there so there's something that you can build upon. This will screw you over. So we want to get rid of it. The best way to get rid of it is to take our sphere and drag and drop it on top of that. So now we have an invisible collision. So remember, with collision, we made a preset already for it. So let's set that before we forget. So type in collision. It's on overlap all. We want it to be on projectile collision. Compile and save that. Another thing is this is hidden in the game because you wouldn't actually want to see it. But we want to be able to see it so that way we can debug it. Compile and save. Save all. Great, so you got your bullet right here. Now you want to add some components to it so that it actually does something. So there is a default component called movement. Okay, and this one's called projectile movement. Okay, compile and save that. So this is going to make it so that way when it spawns, it moves. So we're gonna set these things are gonna be ridiculous settings at first. These are initial things that we set so we can debug. Okay, so the initial speed we're only gonna have it like at, I don't know, 250, and the max speed is gonna be the same because we don't want it going up and down. And since we're gonna be testing our accuracy of our crosshairs, we don't want gravity messing with us yet. Eventually we'll add it in there, but we're gonna leave it set at 0. So compile, save. Remember, this thing's only a centimeter big. If we make it bigger to be able to see it, though, it'll start colliding with things and causing errors. We won't be able to see it. So the best way to be able to see it, we're going to add a tracer on there. Now, I haven't added all of the fancy, cool tracers that we're going to add, and you might want to buy your own, and I have my own, and I don't want to get into that right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some placeholder particle effects. That way we can see where the thing is at. It's going to look stupid, but it's going to help us debug. So add a component, say particle system, and you want to make sure that it's attached to the sphere, which it is. You can tell by the drop down, so that way it's going to follow that. With the particle system, the template will pop up, and there are some default things that come with the engine. So go with the particle system, template, hit the drop down, go with sparks for right now. Okay, how can you miss that, right? You really can't. That's on purpose, so that way we're going to be able to see where it's going in the world. You would never, ever, ever have this on a weapon. Well, maybe you would. I don't know. But that's how we're going to have it. So compile, save, save all. This should be right. I have no idea. This is where things get really murky. So go to the third-person character. We have our function, our calculate shoot to. It's all great. Let's back out of that. Go into your event graph, and you're going to be right over here. So now what I want to do is find my notes on this part. Okay. So there's certain things at this point we're going to need to start running on the server. Spawning the projectile is one of those. It's a big deal. And to do that, you know what we need to do. We need to right click, do custom event, add custom event. We're going to call this spawn projectile. Okay. And in the projectile, we want to have two different things. We want to have two different inputs, or three different things that we're going to send over to the server. First, it's going to be this shoot out information. So let's go ahead and add a new parameter, say shoot2. And we don't want it to be a bool, we want it to be a transform, so it accepts that value. Another thing we want is we want to get a reference to the pawn. Okay. Pawn, and we want it to be the object class. And I can't remember if it's the owner or the instigator. I think it's the owner. And you're going to see why we're using these in just a moment. Pawn is the parent class of character, and a child class of character is your mark character that you made, your default character. So if you want to pass around values specific to a certain class, you're going to need to have them set just like this. And the reason is because the spawn actor function we're about to call requires a pawn. It also requires an actor, which is the parent class of that. And you'll see it'll make more sense when I show you. And that, I think, is going to be the instigator. Okay, I think I have that right. Compile, save. So we got our calculate shoot2. Remember, we make something like this. Oops. You want to make sure you're run on server and reliable. That would have thrown us for a good 20-minute debug. Save all. Okay. Make sure we're all recording. Everything's recording. Great. It's a good day. So we got spawn projectile. Let's call what we made. Spawn projectile. You know what I do not like already is that this isn't very, it makes it sound like it's spawning the projectile. Why don't we call it spawn projectile to server. Okay? Spawn projectile to server. That makes a lot more sense. And then we're going to start sending the data onto the server. Okay, so what do we want to, we want our shoot out to come to our shoot 2. That, remember, that's giving us the angle that the bullet's going to have. The owner and the instigator, let's hold off on these until I actually know which was which, because I get those confused every single time. So let's spawn our actor. Okay, spawn actor from class. Okay, what class do we want to spawn? Right now, we're going to spawn a projectile master. Okay. Connect it up. And remember, this is all happening on the server now. Where do we want to shoot to? Connect that up to our spawn transform. That way it knows where to go. Collision handling. We always want it to spawn. So always spawn and ignore collisions. Now, here's where we finally find out what we need. If you hover over instigator, it's an actor object reference, and the instigator is a pawn object reference. And if I click over here, I switched them around. So if instigator is asking for a pawn and I try to plug this in, it's like, I don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch those around. So take instigator, turn that over to pawn object reference, and then take our owner and take that over to actor reference. Okay? And then owner should plug up just fine, and instigator should plug up just fine. Okay? It's just a matter of getting, they're all actors, but they specified it so you would know Is it supposed to be a character reference, or is it supposed to be the object reference? And you're going to see why you would even want this information in the first place. So compile and save. Okay. So since the owner is an actor reference and the instigator is a pawn reference, we can deduce that the instigator is going to be a pawn. That's going to be you. So let's go ahead and get a reference to yourself. Okay? And you want to know who it is, because when you kill the dude, he's going to want to know who kills him, and it should pop up on the screen if you're doing that type of game. Or even survival game, you get killed, you want to know what killed you. We'll do the same with AI. You're going to know what instigated this whole thing. But you might also want to know, well, I know who killed me, but what did he kill me with, right? If you just all of a sudden get sniped, you want to know what happened. So right-click, type in spawned, get spawned weapon. Okay, that's the owner of the projectile that's coming at you. And there you go. Compile, save, save all. Now you have your instigator and all this sort of stuff. I hope that makes sense. It'll make more sense when we're actually, doing various things. You'll see. So here's a moment of semi-truth. We're going to see what we have going on. This is usually a point where massive debugging starts, because you're going to figure out, why isn't it firing? So let's start with the easy one. Let's start with the server. Let's pick up his weapon. And holy cow, it fired the first time. You notice it's moving at a ridiculously slow speed. Shift F1. Windows left. Let's see what our clients are seeing. Once again, this is for debugging purposes, and it's still living there. It looks like it collided with the wall. That's good. We have a lot of settings to make, but let's see what the client sees when the server fires. So on the right screen, you can see what the client sees. He's seeing a projectile leave the weapon, and it's going toward where I fired it. Oh, that's all great and dandy. Let's see what happens when the client fires. The client goes, he picks up his weapon. He goes over to the server and he fires. And look at that. You can actually see the clients. Great. Let's try a dedicated session, which will have both clients, no server observing, no playable server, I should say. So he goes and picks it up. Oh, and a client can see another client. I can't believe this worked right out of the box. Shift F1. He comes over. He grabs his weapon. Does he fire? Fan-freaking-tastic, it worked. Okay, so we're spawning projectiles. Yeah, they look ridiculous. I know. This is the base. This is how we debug. This is how we figure out what things are going on. So, escape out of here. Now, we want to know, first off, the projectiles are still lasting after they hit something. So let's mess with that. Let's go into our projectile master. Let's go into our event graph here. Okay. So are we generating hit events? That's something we need to see. So hit, actually, that would be on the collision, wouldn't it? Okay. Simulation generates hit events. Make sure on the sphere you have it. Click that. File, save, because we want to know what the projectile is actually hitting. So with hit typed in, you're going to see a little thing that says on component hit on the sphere. Now we have generates hit events. It's going to send some info. Click this button. Now we have a function that fires every time the component hits something. So what we want to do, there's several ways we can do this. We can say break the hit result. We're going to get a lot of different things out of here. We can say what actor did it hit. So let's get name, get display name. There we go. Do a print screen, print string. Mixing up coding. Okay, and then flow that into there. Let's mix up the colors a little bit. Let's choose our cool green. Press OK. I just did that for fun. Turn that over to 5 seconds so it lasts a little longer. Compile, save, save all. Let's see if our projectile is actually hitting anything. Okay. Is it hitting anything? When it gets there. Okay, hit wall 10. Fantastic. It hit mark third person character. Freaking great. That's awesome. Okay, so it's hitting things. Great. Let's see if it's actually hitting bones, though. Because it might just be hitting the capsule. It's hard to tell with all that junk going on. So let's fire. Head. Great. Spine 2. Spine 1. Thigh. Okay, great. So now obviously he looks like a, I don't know what firework that is. Hang on. Okay, so obviously we don't want that stuff just going on and on and on and on like that. So there's a couple little things you can do. Class settings, you can set the lifespan. So let's do that. Man, where do we do that? Is that in the type life? Oops. Initial lifespan. So let's say you're spraying tons of weapons. They're not going to be, first off, they're not going to be moving this slow. The only thing I could think of, maybe if you had like a guided missile and you want to pilot it around, that could be pretty cool. And you could set something like that up, and you would maybe want it to last for a minute or whatever. But for the most part, I can't foresee you wanting a bullet traveling longer than 20 seconds before it destroys itself. And that's great if you're doing some long distance shooting or whatever. But let's say you want to, you don't want those sparks and crap and whatever. The bullet will still be there is what I'm getting at. And you want that to be destroyed when it hits. So what you can do when it does hit is you can make it destroy itself. So you just come over here, type destroy actor. A lot of times in multiplayer, I don't like destroying things right away because there's usually a little bit of delay. So you can put a little delay note in there and leave it for a default 0.2 seconds. Compile, save. I've just found that this time saves you from a headache of trying to figure out, like the server will destroy it before the client even realizes it hit anything, and then you're like, what in the world just happened? So that's just something I've learned over time to have in there. So just have that in there. Press play. And there you go. When it hit, it destroyed itself. Let's try it on here. But it wasn't really like exciting when it did that. So let's make it a little exciting. Let's make it so when it hits, it does something so that we can go, yes, you absolutely hit, and then fantastic, everything was great. So go ahead and drag off of your print screen from right now. Say spawn, spawn emitter. Spawn emitter at a location. Once again, this is going to be a test. It's all it is. Remember, use your impact point. Don't use location. Don't use whatever. Those are for other things, and that will mess you up. Hit right there. That's good enough for now. We could get into more detail later on, and then we need to select the emitter type. We're going to take a ridiculous explosion one. Go ahead and use that, and it should compile, save all. And another thing, we don't need to see the sphere anymore because we have an emitter attached. So hidden in game, turn that back on. In reality, you're probably only going to see the tracer. We'll eventually add a nice, fancy, cool tracer. Okay, so the client fires. And boom. Now let's speed that up because that is just getting stupid slow. Let's say when we're doing rifles and stuff, they're going to move in about 80,000, 90,000. So don't think this is anywhere near the speed, but it's debugging, remember? 500 for the speeds. Pile, save. Okay, and it's hitting, it's exploding, it's great. It appears that the other clients are seeing it. Let's do that. Windows right. Let me shoot at his feet. There you go. Look at that. So the clients are seeing it. Everybody's seeing it. We didn't check the server. He should obviously be seeing it, but don't ever say obviously, because these things can drive you nuts. Okay, so Windows left. Wow, it flew away. Let's try that again. Over here, Windows left. Grab the other one. Okay, so the server, he fires. Oops, he doesn't have a weapon. And it fires. Boom, he sees it. Great. Client fires. We didn't know if the server saw it, but there it is. So everything's working fine and dandy. Okay, so that's where we're at for right now. We have a fully functioning firing system. It's just a matter of doing some massive tweaking, speeding up the bullets. Obviously, we're going to add some nice emitters so it looks good. And let me tell you, the emitters really make or break the game. If you add these, make them, you can buy some, you can find some online. They're all over the place. And that would be what I recommend you do between this tutorial and the next. Find some cool emitters, explosions and stuff, because there's free ones you can find. And in the next video, we're going to add them in there. And then we're going to add the projectile speeds in there. And that way we get a more realistic thing from there. And then we can start adding damage and stuff like that. So we'll have all that in there. Anyway, that's all for now. And if you notice like little bugs or whatever, we'll fix those in the next video. I won't leave you hanging like that. Usually I go through and I'm like, oh, I should have had him do that. But we'll go back through and fix any little things that you're noticing. But for right now, that appears like it's working, and we'll see you in the next one.